the University of Arizona BIO5 Institute, we bring together hundreds of multifaceted experts that include world-class bioscientists, engineers, physicians, and computational researchers. This team science approach is designed to ignite creative solutions to the many complex biological challenges facing our families and communities, and has resulted in disease prevention strategies, promising new therapies, innovative diagnostics and devices, and improved food sustainability.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Science Talks, a conversation hosted by the BIO5 Institute at the University of Arizona. My name is Lisa Romero. Women make up nearly half of the U.S. workforce, but only 27% of the STEM workforce. The opportunity to change that ratio is something that the University of Arizona and the BIO5 Institute is tackling head on. Today, I'm joined by two renowned STEM leaders at the University of Arizona who just happen to be women. Dr. Betsy Cantwell is the University of Arizona's Senior Vice President for Research and Innovation, and Dr. Jennifer Barton is the Director of the BIO5 Institute. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad to be here.
So, we always like to kind of start a little bit more at the beginning than where we are today. So let's time travel a little bit. Today, you're both accomplished engineers as well as academic leaders, but want to walk back with you. Was there a defining moment in your early years or in your school years that led you to this career choice? And you guys can Dr. Cantwell, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, and I have a story which many people have heard, but it's actually really true. For me, the defining moment was I had completed an undergraduate degree in psychology. I started my career there, and was about to enter graduate school for a master's in social work. And I had kind of an epiphany and perhaps this is a comment on these kinds of activities, in the intake activity where they brought all the new grad students in and told them what was going to happen and how it was going to be. And I just went, nope. And I literally got up and walked out and kind of went, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do now. So I thought a lot about what I really wanted to do. And I was very motivated by, this is for those of you that are listening to this, we were having a little warm-up talk about moon landings, but I was very little, but I remember, I think I was in, kindergarten or maybe even preschool, but I was at school and they put this little TV about this big on the stage in the school auditorium. And we all filed in and nobody could actually see it, but we could hear it. And we listened to the moon landing. Now, I'm sure, I just remember it incredibly well, even today. And so I decided I wanted to be an astronaut. And in order to be an astronaut, you had to have pretty much either be in the military, which I was not, or get a PhD in something STEM related. So I went back to school and started all over again. And here we are.
That's amazing.
It was a good choice.
You're still in school. Right?
I am. And it turns out that academia or higher ed, particularly public higher ed, is a phenomenal mission in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Jennifer, you want to tell, I know a little bit about your background, but I am sure that everyone would love to hear a little bit about how you started out as well.
Well, I came from a whole STEM family. My father was an aerospace engineer and my mother was a chemistry and math major. And I have four brothers, three older ones who are all engineers. My parents believed very firmly that you went to school and you got a 4-year degree and you went out and you worked. And so you needed a job that you could get needed a degree where you could get a good job. So I was allowed to study anything I wanted as long as it was engineering. So I decided, fine. I was not a great student, but I was good enough. And so I looked to see what do engineers do? And so, well, if I'm going to be an engineer, I might as well be the one that makes the most money. So I went and looked, and the top of the list at the time was a petroleum engineer.
Yes.
I was in Texas, but I didn't want to work on an oil rig. So number 2 was electrical engineering. So I went and got an electrical engineering degree. I have to admit, electrical engineering is an incredibly great background to have. It was not my passion, though. So I kind of came around to that gradually. I went to work for the space station program, had a great time there, got to work on the electrical system layout, got to work on the external lighting system. That led me to NASA Johnson Space Center, where I got to work with the astronauts on a mock-up of the International Space Station. And I realized there was this thing called biomedical engineering that you could do that would work with human systems in the context of engineering. So that was exciting. So when I had the opportunity, I went back and got a PhD in biomedical engineering and figured I'd go back to work for NASA or something. I also wanted to be an astronaut, right? I think we all wanted to be astronauts. Wasn't ever selected, but had the opportunity to come to the University of Arizona, and this has been fantastic.
So Jennifer, I think we probably, I also started my career once I was an engineer working for NASA. I worked at the Ames Research Center. I worked at the Johnson Space Center. And I was on the, early in my career, the team of people that designed potties for the various, including the station potty, among other august things one could do. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if we didn't unknowingly cross paths working on the ISS. And the point of that is that there are so many women that I encounter in engineering who started their careers because they were not only inspired, everybody's frankly, I think, inspired by the idea of going to space, but that NASA provided opportunities. And those opportunities have trained generations of women. And more than other parts of the federal government, NASA provided opportunities.
Yeah, my mother was a computer at NASA, just like in the movie. Actually, they both say that movie was very accurate. And so that was an opportunity. It was, there were very definitely things that men did and what women did back then, but women were given magnificent opportunities.
Well, I mean, that's a great segue. Opportunities, as you both know, female engineers are very rare. You both hold multiple degrees in engineering, worked for NASA as engineers. And so sort of with the odds stacked against you, how have you found success? How did you ride that wave of opportunity that you kind of, went into with a sort of staggering path, and then, success as a woman in STEM, as an engineer, and then, what are some true life lessons that we can share with young girls and young women today about opportunities as they present themselves?
There are so many.
Yes.
But
some of the ones that you have experienced yourself.
I think, at least my experience, because I started working, I was always in graduate school where I went to school, about 11%, I remember that number really well, of the class in mechanical engineering was female. And it's not that different today, frankly. But I went to work at a time when it was relatively acceptable to say things like, real sort of explicit sexuality was not allowed, but a lot of men would say, we only hired you because you were a woman. And I always thought, and I think it's true, women are actually just as good engineers. So if you get the opportunity and you get the job, you'll probably do better because you perform better, or at least equally well. And the trick is to find those places to work where your performance is what matters.
Mm-hmm. I think you may have heard of the Sherlock Holmes versus Hermione Granger, where disciplines where charisma and brilliance are valued tend to be male dominated, because Sherlock Holmes was brilliant. He didn't work, he just thought of the answer and it was right. And so there are very many of the sciences that are dominated that way. Whereas Hermione Granger is a hard worker. She worked very hard for everything and accomplished because of what she was accomplished. And I remember hearing this theory, and there's some flaws to the theory, but it's an interesting thought application of, are women more accepted in fields where hard work and results are what matters? And I thought, if that's the case, engineering ought to be female dominated, because you cannot talk your way into a bridge being sound, right? It either is or it isn't, and your hard work gets you there. And so I think that thinking about that really actually helped me. And I found a couple of my female students found that well. They're just like, well, I'm just not as smart, or people haven't told me that I'm this way, or you're brilliant, Dr. Barton, but I'm not. And I'm like, no, I am not brilliant. I work hard. We think about things. You do have sometimes flashes of insight, but that comes from experience, and you just persist. And it can be hard and it can stink. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. I think too many times women think that, it must be so easy for other people. If I'm struggling, it means that I'm not meant to do it. And that's not the case at all. So you don't have to love math. You just got to get through it. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's, I think, supporting and empowering and sharing that journey. I think you're right. People look at accomplished women and women leaders and maybe think their path was smooth, or that they had a straight shot to their dream. And I think sharing equally the hard things and the real life lessons are really things that empower our students today and our young women that are entering into that journey that you've described. So that's really useful.
That makes me think one thing, Lisa, one comment I want to make on what Jennifer said, because I think a lot more women in STEM fields, and certainly I see this in engineering, have a really high appreciation for the privilege of working around other smart people. And that's not a gender specific thought process, but an awful lot of women in engineering are really appreciative of being around all these smart, it's like, it does take a village to get a big engineering job done, just as an example. It's really hard to be the brainiac in the room, the Sherlock Holmes in the room, and get something like a big bridge built. So the point is, appreciate that you may not always be the smartest person in the room, but that's actually not nearly as good a position to be in as the one where you understand that there are lots of smart people and they have an enormous amount of value, and together you get a lot more done.
Wow, that's great advice as well. So not only are you both, unicorns in your success as female engineers, but you have also, whether by choice or by chance, entered into this intersection of science or STEM in your career and business, because you are both leaders in an institutional organizational environment, a CEO, a VP, those sort of business type roles. And I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about, again, whether that sort of happened by chance or choice, how you, I think a lot of people looking at STEM disciplines don't really even know or understand that there is an intersection with business and science that usually exists. And it's a marriage of the two, and just maybe talk a little bit about how, that is intertwined for you, and how do you work to achieve the goals in both areas?
Jennifer?
Dr. Barton.
I can riff on anything.
I know, right? You do that to the T. I think I had to learn it a little bit the hard way. One of the great experiences I had was working on the space station program and having to write grants. So you had to write a grant, and you had to look at the specifications, and you had to write what the prime contractor wanted to hear. So I think that is one of the points that people sometimes get hung up on, is that they want to write about what's in their head. They're not thinking about what the customer wants. And that mentality of thinking about what the customer wants, what value you can provide to the customer, I think is something that is great and persists in all different dimensions of your life. So I've always tried to keep that in mind. And I've always tried to think of, what can I provide that's going to provide value, that's going to have a return on the investment that's made into me. And, you use the word unicorn, Lisa, but I don't think so. I mean, there's so many people here at the University of Arizona, and I haven't ever been at another university. So Betsy will have to tell me if the culture here is unique. But one of the great things here, I think about University of Arizona, is if you have a really good idea and you're willing to rally people around it and you're willing to put the work and effort into making it happen, then you're generally given the go ahead to go do it. And that is so incredibly empowering and exciting, to go around and say, hey, this is what we can all do together. This is what I can give value to you. You can give this value to me. Together we can create something new. And in the end, that's what engineering is all about. It's about designing and building things.
Which lends, I think, engineers to, you'll see this a lot, but engineers make really good corporate and even institutional managers and leaders, because we are frequently trained to think about what's that complex system that has to come together and function, which is why business attracted me initially. They are really, especially large corporations, really incredibly complex adaptive systems, actually. And I always thought that was really interesting. And I had reached a point in my career where I had to learn a lot about business in order to function, and to make the scale of the things that I was trying to make happen, get big buildings built, build $100 million, $200 million programs. I had to understand, as Jennifer said, I had to understand all the companies that were coming to work with us. I worked at a national lab at the time, but I had to really understand the business ecosystem, and how, I'll just put it, the social constructs around how money flows in different organizations are very influential and really different from organization to organization. But this is the place when I started in business school, was the place where I had been through sort of personality test kind of things in a large organization before, but I think it's actually, and I've used several vehicles that with women students that work with me, because it's really interesting and useful to get a kind of validated but unbiased perspective on your leadership skills and your leadership, just what your style is, because often those vehicles were created to kind of enable you to sort of line up your gut sense of who you are in the workplace with a style and go, that that is absolutely fine. And it's I love taking women, particularly I've worked with a lot of women in undergraduates in engineering, and given them a sense of their leadership style before they're out of their freshman year, is enormously empowering.
Yeah, that's exciting. And what's great about working in an academic environment for me as well is that we have these undergraduate students. I mean, we even have high school students that come in, and we can, early on teach them about this intersection, and about that there are other things that are STEM related that perhaps aren't, in a research lab. I mean, I never imagined that I would be, communications leader in STEM. And my twisting and turning career path led me to that. And, whether it's marketing or grant writing or, so many of the other more traditional business type functions, I think it's really exciting to have opportunities as a student to start learning those things in this type of environment.
Well, and every student in STEM should understand that you will become a communicator. It will be a core part of what you have to deliver in order to get your any aspect of working in a STEM, particularly business environment, and absolutely in academia. You have to really think about communicating in all its glorious forms, not just the written form, but what are the graphical representations that can be, what are the video representations? How do we tell others about what we do? I spend so much of my world now is thinking about how to communicate what we do at the university.
Yeah, I can say it's really cool to see the trajectory, because when I started in science communications in like 2008, and I worked for a different organization that was even more complex than BIO5. And the concept of them communicating and learning how to market themselves and how to talk to general public just was not as much on the radar at that point at all. And it's taken some time, but it's really exciting today, because I think new scientists and even more established scientists now do realize that that is a part of the package, and you can't live without it. But I think it's changed pretty dramatically in terms of STEM and scientists and engineers and doctors realizing that they have to do that, and actually embracing that and asking for help and guidance. And so I find that that's really a cool thing.
Well, for anybody listening to this, people like Lisa are golden. I mean, you are so unique and not special. Yes, special, but having people with your skill set who aren't embedded in the underpinnings of the discipline and really able to bring a communicator's lens to the things that BIO5 does is really, really important for us. So it isn't just being the communicator, it's having people on your team who really think about that and do it well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. And it's, when I talk about STEM jobs, and mention mine as an example, it's a dream job because of exactly what you said. I get to tell a story of people that want to change the world. They wake up every day and say, what can I do better? What can I do different? How can I improve the health of the people in our community and state? And the work that all of you do, and be able to use words that can connect it to perhaps people that would never even know about all of the things that are happening. So it's really, I feel like it's a privilege, but thank you for that. So let's switch gears a little bit and go to how competition makes us better. So, I mean, Dr. Cantwell, I think most people know that prior to coming to the University of Arizona, you were the CEO of ASU's research enterprise and the vice president for research development. And I think, I'm an alum of ASU. My daughters work and attend ASU. And so we both have these ties to that school up north, as the people in Tucson refer to it lovingly. So I think my question is kind of a unique perspective on how do these competitive rivalries, in your opinion and in your experience now at both schools, sort of drive us, make us better? How are they important? How is the relationship we have at U of A with ASU and with NAU important to driving the bioscience and the innovation and industry and research goals and education goals in our state? How does that competition make us better and stronger?
It's a complicated question, and it doesn't always make us stronger, but where it does is at that intersection of what Jennifer was talking about, which is waking up every day and wanting to make a difference. And we are kind of out, we're clan-based creatures, right? We all, if you go back to our sports competitions, that's certainly not the only, but it is what and who we are as a species. So the way that competition works the best across between ASU and U of A is really where We are taking that I want to make the world a better place mindset and kind of pitting ourselves against one another. Sometimes, however, we come together and we compete against, the California schools, for instance, or, so that competition is always best and works really well when we're using it to accelerate our mindset of wanting to do better. It's not good when we use it to want to take any other entity, down a peg. And having worked at both institutions, it's really not the quality of the research that's the differentiator between our institutions. We're very different, culturally very different. We frankly, I think, provide our students with sort of a different type of experience. But under the covers, when you look up how many of our grants and contracts are done jointly with ASU, hundreds of them. So our people are talking to each other because they want to get the work done. They want to work with people who think like they do, and they want to do better for the world. And that is actually, you see it at NAU as well. Our universities in this state are driven to provide, to find solutions, to provide value culturally. And I think that's sort of an aspect of Arizona. Other universities have people who feel that way, but it isn't nearly as embedded in their culture.
Yeah, I agree. I like to say that, my competition is cancer, right? We're working against in my case, the diseases that affect people, or it could be in the inequities that are in the world, or threats to our environment, or just the unknown, pushing back the unknown. And so I'm thrilled that we have such a cooperative state here. And I have many, many collaborators and cooperators, and sometimes they're your competition when you're trying to get grants, because there is only so much money that the federal agencies are handing out. Sometimes they're your competitors, sometimes they're your collaborators. But I think everybody keeps in mind that we aren't each other's competition so much as we are here to help build on each other. So that's a great environment. And I think, yeah, Arizona is unique in that respect. Maybe it's because we don't have so many people here. I was talking to a colleague at Boston University, and I was like, oh, it must be great. You're there in Boston. You've got all these other universities around you. You've got all this industry. You've got all this going on. You've got all this venture capital money. And they're like, well, yes and no, right? That has its own issues. And people who are a couple miles away from each other don't seem to talk to each other anywhere near as much as we do with people who are, hundreds of miles away from each other that we do here. So, so competition is great, right? We love it. We thrive on it. We want to be the first. It gets us up in the morning. We're going to do something better. But I think it's for the vast part, very, very healthy and a good thing.
And of course, we do want to win, hands down, in football and basketball and baseball. There's no like friendly competition there.
There's definitely not. You can come to my house on a UASU game day. And
are you a home divided?
Oh yes, yes, like dozen people home divided, right down the middle. So it's pretty funny. Very competitive and loyal, house divided. So, you talk about Arizona being this, more unique space in terms of being, results driven and innovation minded. And, Dr. Cantwell, innovation is in your title.
It is.
And Dr. Barton, one of BIO5's top goals is driving innovation through research and education. And so how do we, sometimes we get bogged down in the day-to-day and, the administrative parts of our jobs and the things we can't change overnight. And, how do we, keep encouraging an innovation-minded mindset and goals here at the University of Arizona? Dr. Cantwell, when you go to sleep at night and you say, this is in my title and I'm not feeling very innovative, I'm feeling, kind of tired. What do you remind yourself in terms of keeping that mindset, in ahead of you and sharing that with others, and then again, engaging our students in that path along the way?
There's so much to say about students, and I'd love to hear what Jennifer has to say there. I will just say that I really strive, and I think this is functionally what an innovation culture is all about, to be thinking about what am I doing to create the next runway for either a person or a team or a group of students, somebody at the university to go do the next thing. Because if we're just sort of managing the present, and it not only, so it doesn't feel good to me. That's where I feel like, wait a minute, innovation is in my title and all I'm doing is managing the present. I don't rest in that place very often. I'm always kind of, okay, where can I create the next runway out into the future? And that, at least that, makes me feel better. And I think it provides the university with a sense of forward motion and the ability to have new thoughts and ideas. And that's kind of what innovation really ought to be for us.
Yep. Speaking of students, I don't ever get to be stuck in that mode for very long without innovation, because I just walk in the lab and I've got 5 grad students and half a dozen undergraduates, and then the Keys High School student who comes in and says, well, why are you doing it this way? Why aren't you doing that? And it's so refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
To have the students come in and ask why and come up. I have a couple of students who, there's some days I'm like, oh no, not their stream of ideas again, because they'll come up with ideas and, maybe 9 out of 10 of them are just, crazy. But then I'll think, well, no, wait, maybe that's only 8 out of 10, because that one that I just said was crazy. Well, maybe I'm not thinking about it enough. I think there's something there that's great. And then there's always at least 1 out of the 10 that's a really, really fantastic idea. So just don't run out of things to do. Always thinking of ways to innovate. And, in my lab, that could be a new medical application, or it could be something very, very practical, like, well, how come you mounted the mirror this way? How come you didn't mount it the other way? Then you could have, reduced the length of your system by 3 inches, which all of a sudden allows you to do this, which tumbles on to some other outcome and some other capability you didn't know that you could do. And so that's fun. So that's why I'm here. I'm here at the University of Arizona because of the students. We could run a research institute as a nonprofit organization, or someplace where we didn't have students, and there are frankly people who think that that might be better, but I don't. The students are the heart and soul of the research we do, and it's so much the better for them, and it's so much the better that we bring people in young. I love having the high school students, and I love having the undergraduates. The undergraduates keep the graduate students nervous, right? Because they're always there, just nipping at their heels and making them perform. There's where friendly competition comes in. I see it among my students. So I think that's fantastic, and we need to nurture that. We need to encourage these students to be innovative and to come up with their novel ideas that are changing the way that we do research and business.
So that is really why I personally came into academia from National Laboratory, because Jennifer's right on every front. There is nothing like the energy and the intellect and the innovation of students if you listen to them. And they're not always right. They don't have the experience, but being around a lot of younger people is incredibly refreshing.
I agree. Again, half of our team, more than half of our team is students, and we could not do what we do without them, even outside of research labs. It's really, again, a privilege to have them and their creativity and willingness to do just about anything. So So I don't want to take up more of your time. We're going to end on a fun note. Well, maybe some people don't think this is fun, but we like to do the fun facts, like, anything about each of you that maybe nobody knows or might not believe. The fun fact that you have, anything that you'd like to share as we close, something that grounds you, something that makes you have fun or laugh or.
Goodness.
I think I know some of Dr. Barton.
Well, I think, an awful lot of my work is desk work, computer work, laboratory work, working in a laser lab. A lot of times you spend a lot of time in the dark. So I love to balance all of that by being outside. I love to hike. I try to garden. I don't know if I love gardening or hate gardening. I'm not sure which, but I go do battle with the Tucson sun and insects and wind and occasional freak snowstorm and try to garden and really enjoy that. That grounds me and brings me back to nature and is soothing, right? The green is soothing.
And I am right there. I mean, doing what we do sort of almost mandates that you have some outdoor component. So I do a lot of hiking. I bicycle. I used to run back in the day. And that, my plans often are, how do I make sure I can do that when I'm 85? How do I make sure I can do that when I'm 90? And I think for those of us that have kids, your kids are very grounded. I mean, mine are sort of just entering the world of adulthood now. And it's incredibly cool to be their sounding board while they're trying out the things they're trying out. I feel that's a huge privilege and so worth my time. And actually being a sounding board for young people generally, for our students, for my kids' friends, is such an incredible privilege.
Well, thank you both for giving us your time today, and thank you for being an inspiration to so many of us, our faculty, our staff, our students, and for empowering the people around you and giving us the tools to keep moving forward and keeping the reason why we're doing things alive on any given day. So really do want to thank you for all you do for the University of Arizona and BIO5 and our state. And thank you for joining us today. So thank you, all of you, our listeners, for also joining us today for another episode of Science Talks. For more information, please visit us on our website at bio5.org. And from all of us at the BIO5 Institute, we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Science Talks. Continue the conversation with us next time as we learn more about the amazing science happening at the University of Arizona's BIO5 Institute.